Okay, thank you so much for joining us. Sridhar is with us today. He is one of the folks behind the prestigious IGDC event that takes place every year. Um, before I do a butchery of a job of an introduction for him, Sridhar, maybe I'll just hand over the mic to you and you could tell me a little bit more about yourself. And then we could talk about the inception of IGDC, the why, when, how, and, what inspired you to start it. Over to you.
Cool. Thanks, Nishant. Thanks for having me here. Uh, I'm one of the volunteers. At the moment, kind of in a voluntary role, I head up the organization. IGDC, okay, about me. I'm a game developer, primarily mobile games. We've been building video games since the Apple App Store came out. We're probably the first Indian studio to actually have a couple of games in the App Store. Like we had a couple of games when there were like less than 70 games in the App Store, right? And there was no obviously Play Store and others. So we're one of the first studios to build mobile games here. We've been building games since then, and our focus has always been predominantly Western market and IP-based games. Like we've licensed IPs like Star Trek, Adventure Time, Kingsman, Madagascar, Who Wants to Be a Millionaire, a bunch of them, right? And then we built free-to-play games and we released them. Some of them succeeded, some of them did. So that's about us. The company is called Yes No. I started volunteering with IGDC about 7-8 years back, right? Just to give you a little bit background about IGDC, IGDC used to be called NGDC, NASCOM Game Developer Conference. Started over 16 years back, started in Hyderabad, and it was done along with animation and a few other industries. And then, eventually it moved to Pune, where it kind of grew a little bit. And it was always a volunteer-driven thing. It's just that at some point, NASCOM decided they didn't want to do video gaming anymore, and they kind of handed it over to us who were volunteering already to produce content, because I was back then used to handle the business track in content. I used to handle something called Investor Publisher Connect, where we used to bring in investors and publishers and then match them with potential gaming studios or game developers, right? So, and I was doing that, and that's when, NASCOM said, we can't support this anymore, and would you guys want to continue, take over? And we were like more than happy to. And that's when also Hyderabad or the government here stepped up. They said, hey, if you guys want to do this, we'll back you guys financially and all that. So that's how we ended up back in Hyderabad. And it kept on growing since then. We are now almost, I think, almost 4,000 attendees. The first IGDC or NGDC had around 200 attendees. So we've been growing. It's only getting bigger and bigger. And if you've noticed, the number of activities we do is like amazing. And it's all, it's a non-profit thing. He used to do it, everything from a WhatsApp group till recently. We just take a couple of weeks out every year to make this event happen.
Unbelievable. It's amazing that, what is now considered the mecca of Indian gaming events, and it's a pilgrimage that every aspiring gaming entrepreneur must make, is built on the back of volunteers, passion, and WhatsApp groups. I got to say, this is a very inspiring story, Sridhar. Tell me a little bit about why you do this, right? Like, I mean, you clearly, you said you're doing this as a volunteer. So why do you pour in the efforts every few weeks every year to do this?
Well, it's just, I used to travel quite a bit to US. I used to, I spoke at GDC, 12, 15 years back, and, in San Francisco. And, at some point, you also don't go really into the GDC Convention Center anymore, or you don't attend any sessions because the ticket itself is so insanely expensive. But what you do end up doing is you make rounds of the different hotels over there, right? There's the Marriott, there is the W, there is the Ritz, Intercontinental. So you move around and you have all your meetings, and it's incredible amount of networking. The amount of work you can get done in those 2 weeks, those 2-3 days is insane, And I always thought not everybody is lucky enough to be able to travel like that, or not everybody is lucky enough to, or probably is at a level where they can command that number of meetings and, be able to do it. So we wanted to see if there is something at a smaller scale we could pull it off, where as India keeps getting bigger and bigger, can we get the world to come here, right? And that was the vision, and it ended up, it's started coming together because as you said, IGDC has become part of the India calendar, right? If you notice who is going to be there, who of Indian gaming community is going to be there, right? Every CXO is going to be there, and they are there to meet people. They are there to advise and help people, as well as learn and business gets done, right? So that's part of it. And eventually, we think as the Indian market keeps getting bigger and bigger, we will be part of the international calendar. We are going to be like the place where, just like we all go to San Francisco or Germany for Gamescom or some of the other events. India is going to be like that for IGDC, where people are going to travel here because we are definitely going to have more game developers than anybody out there soon.
Great. So I think we've now established the why and the what and even partially the who, right? Let's understand the how. So how does IGDC provide support to new and indie studios? And, maybe you could tell us about a few success stories that you and your team are particularly proud of, of maybe a company that's come to IGDC and kind of credits their success to IGDC.
Oh, that's a good question. I think, just to go a little bit, first of all, step back on the who a little bit. I'm just one of the many, many volunteers. There's a large team of industry veterans, like Rajesh Rao was the one who's been there from the day one. There's Manavender, there's Manish, and Anando, Imtiaz. There's a large number of people who've been supporting us. Shruti. So we've been, we've all been together and building this. So I would like to acknowledge that it's not like, one person, or it's almost like a 75-80 member volunteer group, along with a pretty savvy, compact ops team headed by March, right? March and Nitish, they head that, and they've been growing, so we wouldn't have got to this size without March and his team, the kind of effort they put in, right? So that's just wanted to say who. The things we've been doing lately is, there are different kinds of activities, right? There is the, Investor Publisher Connect was started about 7-8 years back. Shruti used to head up IGDC back then. She just booked a hotel room, not a hotel room, a restaurant closer to the convention center, and basically said, hey, next 2 hours you can go ahead and, do all your meetups there or meetings. So it was that simple, where we had about 7-8 investors. We had about 15 odd companies who wanted to be part of it. Now, who is who of the gaming, where some of those 15 companies, I won't take names, but they were, introduced to some of the investors back then, including some of the bigger investors were there. And that's how we started it. Now, Investor Publisher Connect, which happens during IGDC, headed by Imtiaz and Dayaniti, Ravi, and a few others, has over 100, 150 investors and publishers who are going to be part of it. hundreds of companies are going to be part of it. Scheduled meetings are over 3,000. And, so the scale is completely at a different league now, right? And so that's just one of the large event which happens. IGDC has also, I would I would stop there and let you ask any questions you might want to ask about investor connection, investor publisher connection before I move on to the other aspects.
No, please don't stop on my account, Sridhar. So, look, since you have stopped, maybe I'll just ask a follow-up question here. If I'm a game developer that's now looking to raise funds or meet the right people at IGDC, how do I make the most of my visit to this event? What kind of advice would you have for companies trying to network efficiently at this event?
So the reality is people are not going to give you money unless you are incredibly talented, right? There are two things which need to go for you. You can potentially raise a pre-seed round if you are two things. One, very, very talented, and the work or the portfolio you put together makes it apparent, or the prototype or the vertical slice you have put together makes it apparent that you are somebody and people need to back you, right? The second aspect of it is you are already somebody, you worked in one of the bigger companies which had an exit, you are the product head, design head, you are engineering head, one of those guys, right? There also, it's super easy to raise those seed rounds, right? Or pre-seed rounds, or being part of an incubator. So if you're none of those, then try to be them, right? So the focus should be, see the kind of work which is getting acknowledged by people. What is that others are working? Find yourself a mentor. Like one of the initiatives this year is we have something called Young Indie Scholarship, where we are getting a bunch of people who have shown some sort of potential to come down for free of cost to IGDC, and we are giving them mentors, and they can, they can just learn from each other, right? So we're giving them exposure. Hopefully, a year or two later, they're going to get to a point where they are full-fledged indie. And that said, there's another initiative called Indie 40, where we've selected about 40 indies, where we are giving them subsidized booths, and of course, a lot of exposure as part of the Investor Publisher Connect. Because if you are part of Indie 40, then we are basically saying, hey, you are somebody who already has shown some potential. Now we want to provide you guidance in terms of mentorship and others by making those intros, and hopefully help you raise that little bit of money so that you can level up, right? So that's how we look at it. And of course, the second way to raise money is more like a Series A. That's going to happen where you have already shown traction in whatever product you're building. So if you're like an indie and your game is more or less ready, and you put it up on wish list, and you got like 50,000, 100,000 signups, right? At that point, somebody will give you $1 million or a couple of $1 million, right? That's for sure. Or the second thing is, if it is a mobile game and at a unit economics, you've shown great retention, engagement, or monetization, right? So either way, you're fundable if any of those things happen. So, but the reality is, IGDC is a place where if you are not one of those, use it as a soundboard. Come, talk to people, show your work. And the great thing about gaming community, Indian gaming community especially, is people are wild. They call BS when it is, but they're also incredibly compassionate. When they see somebody with a lot of, excitement towards the industry, and they just need a little bit of guidance, people will take time to provide that guidance. So use IGDC as a way to learn from others' work, show off your work as much as possible. And in case it's not good enough, people are going to tell you it's not good enough. And so that way IGDC is great.
Understood. So the message I'm receiving is, if you're a superstar, make sure you get as many meetings as you can, with the investors at IGDC. If you are not a superstar yet, go use feedback from IGDC to try and become one. Would you
Exactly.
say, Fantastic. So, would you say that a large percentage of IGDC attendees are first-time participants, or would you say that most of the folks attending are now veterans?
So it's split into like, top 50, 100 gaming studios, right? All the CXOs among those top 50, all of them will be there. And we've all been meeting each other for over a decade now, right? Either IGDC or GDC or Gamescom, different places, right? So we are or other get together. So we all meet, but then you also want to be here because this is where you are going to find those rare gems in terms of game developers who are doing something amazing. So IGDC is something everybody travels to, even though we all meet quite often. Now, in terms of new people to IGDC, at any year is usually about 25%. 75% are folks who've been coming to it, maybe with a break or not, but they've been coming to it for a while.
Interesting. Now, I've also noticed that, while IGDC, the I stands for India, there is a lot of international participation and a lot of international attendees that tend to come down to, study the Indian games market. Are there any conscious plans for expanding IGDC to reach more international attendees, or, are you thinking of this as a more organic evolution of the conference itself?
We do make a conscious effort, like most of our speakers. We pay for flying them down, hotels. There is a lot of expense involved there. But we do that because that's very, very, useful for us. There have been cases where we invited a few speakers to come down to IGDC to speak, who ended up finding a local Indian co-founder and starting successful funded gaming companies, right? So we do make a conscious effort to identify great speakers who have pedigree in game design or art direction, stuff like that, right? And of course, we do encourage a lot of business people to come because this is where they're going to find talent. This is where they're going to find gaming studios who could use their tools. So that's something we don't necessarily pay for them to fly down because for them it's a business and networking opportunity, but we make sure they know that we exist and the event happens. That said, while hundreds of international attendees come, we are not necessarily satisfied with it. We are going to keep making that effort where IGDC is going to be one of the top 3 events in the world, right? And that's just a matter of a couple of more years. We're going to get there.
Fantastic. And that leads me very nicely to my next question, which was, it was going to be, what is the vision for IGDC in the midterm, and what is your, key milestones that you hope to hit? Now, you've already told me you want to be one of the top 3 events in the world, which is, in my opinion, a fantastic ambition to have. What kind of milestones are you looking forward to? And would you say any of those have been accomplished this year already?
Yeah, I mean, in terms of we've helped identify a lot of gaming studios. We help them find investors. We help them find co-founders or help them get into incubators. And we think that's our job, which is basically making those connections happen, helping upskill people upskill. So those are the 2 things. Lately, we've been considering maybe helping the government a little bit on the policy side, but we will predominantly focus on the talent aspect of policy because that seems cleaner and that's something India needs to solve. So we will continue doing that. As a short-term goal is, as I said, we would be from a business event point of view, we would be the number 2 or number 3 event in the world soon enough, like maybe in 2 to 3 years, right? Long term is obviously, we want India to be one of the dominant players in video game development, right? Maybe even own 1/3 of the share, right? That's in next 2 decades, right? Now, next 15 years. Now, how does IGDC facilitate that? Maybe not as just one event, but multiple satellite events, multiple activities we do, which we've done like something called College Connect or Game Connect, where we run game hackathons or game jams in different colleges. We are working with large groups like WTF or Ministry of Information Broadcasting, and a few other BYOG, our own group, where we do large game jams, which everybody can participate. And then we do developer days, we do women in gaming. So all these activities lead up to people getting the awareness about game development and, filling the gaps in their knowledge.
Fantastic. Now, before we conclude this interview, I need to ask, what's one thing that you and the team are extremely excited about at this year's IGDC?
We are going to be we formed a Game Developer Association, which basically is co-founded by all the top gaming studios of India. And that's going to be going live this year. The other interesting trend we have seen is a lot of states have their pavilions. Like just like you go to GDC and Gamescom and you see, Finland pavilion or France pavilion and so on. IGDC, it looks like, is going to end up where you're going to see a Nagaland pavilion or a Karnataka pavilion, Rajasthan pavilion, and so on. So we are becoming that destination where states want to be there to promote what kind of work studios in that state are doing, right? So that's very interesting and exciting for us.
Very cool. All right, Sridhar, this has been very insightful. Just, one last thing as we wrap up. For folks listening and, still on the fence about whether or not they should come to IGDC this year, what's your elevator pitch? Why should they make up their mind and just book that ticket?
Well, I would say don't come, and you no idea what you're going to miss out, right? Just we've had folks who got funded, folks who found their co-founders, folks who just, dropped what they were doing and built something else just because of a meeting or, so if you are building video games and you're not in India and you're not at IGDC, then you're not thinking about learning, right? It's you shouldn't be building things in isolation. You should be talking to people. You should be getting feedback. And if you're not there at IGDC, you're definitely missing out. And, and I wouldn't recommend that. Somebody who's been building video games for a very long time, I wouldn't recommend building on your own without getting people to see it. The more people see, better your product gets.
Fantastic response. Couldn't have said it better myself. For everyone that's listening, if you haven't already made up your mind, you're making a big mistake. Come to IGDC. We'll all be there to learn and to share what we know. Do book that ticket and join us. We look forward to meeting you over there as well. Thank you so much for your time, Sridhar, in March, and the entire IGDC team. It's been an absolute pleasure, and we look forward to meeting you guys there.
Thank you, Nishant. Thanks, Sridhar. Thanks, Sridhar. Thank you, Ignesh.
Thank you, everybody.